It was just another Monday morning at Haversfield Corporation. The lobby gleamed with glass walls and marble floors as employees rushed past, clutching coffee cups and murmuring about deadlines. The world moved fast here. No one looked down. No one noticed the woman pushing a mop across the tiles. She was invisible. Just another janitor. Just another uniform. Until she spoke. Jonathan Miles, the CEO, had been walking through the lobby, distracted by numbers in his head and an upcoming investors meeting, when he heard something that made him pause mid-stride. A clear, steady voice drifted across the hall, not in English, but in flawless Mandarin. The tone was calm, confident, effortless. He turned instinctively, expecting to see one of the company's translators or international partners. Instead, he saw her. A black woman in a gray janitorial uniform stood beside the touchscreen directory, speaking gently to a lost visitor holding a delivery slip. Her dark eyes were focused, her gestures soft yet precise. The visitor smiled gratefully, nodded, and hurried toward the elevators. Then, without hesitation, the woman switched to Spanish, answering another man's question about a shipment. A moment later, she turned to a vendor and spoke in French, smooth as silk. The CEO froze. His hand loosened around his briefcase. 3 languages in less than a minute, and all from the janitor no one had ever really seen. He watched in silence, caught between disbelief and curiosity. When the crowd thinned, he stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said softly. She turned, startled but polite. "Yes, sir?" "That was Mandarin, right?" She nodded. "Yes, sir." "And Spanish? And French?" Another nod, modest, almost shy. "Also Portuguese, Arabic, Italian, Swahili, and I can read Latin." Jonathan blinked. 9 languages? "Yes, sir." Her tone was steady, humble, like it wasn't a big deal. But it was. It was extraordinary. "What's your name?" he asked. "Denise Carter." He studied her for a long moment. "Miss Carter, could you come with me for a few minutes?" She hesitated. The instinctive kind of hesitation of someone who's been ignored too many times to believe sudden attention is harmless. Still, she nodded. Of course. They entered the elevator. Denise stood quietly, her hands clasped, her reflection blending into the metal walls. "I've worked here for 12 years, she murmured suddenly. "Never been up to the top floor before." Jonathan looked at her and smiled faintly. "Well, it's about time." When they stepped into his office, Denise's eyes swept across the polished wood, the skyline, the walls filled with awards and maps. She didn't seem impressed, just thoughtful. He gestured for her to sit. "Denise," he began slowly, "I didn't expect to meet someone who speaks 9 languages while mopping my lobby. How did that happen?" She exhaled, folding her hands. "You got time for the truth?" He nodded. "I was a linguistics student once," she said quietly. "Full scholarship, bright future. But then life happened. My mom got sick. I dropped out to care for her. My dad died the same year. I had a baby to raise. Bills didn't wait. So I cleaned floors, worked nights, anything that paid, but I never stopped learning. Books, tapes, newspapers from every country I could find. It kept my mind alive." Her voice was calm, without bitterness. "Most people never ask," she added softly. "They see the uniform and assume." That word hit him like a stone. Assume. Jonathan leaned back, silent for a long moment. There was something humbling in her simplicity, something powerful in her quiet resilience. "You ever think of doing anything else?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Dreams are expensive, sir. Rent comes first." He didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, the CEO who always had answers found himself speechless. As she rose to leave, he said, "Denise, thank you for sharing that, truly." She nodded, eyes kind. "Just doing my job, sir." But as she walked out of his office, Jonathan felt something shift inside him. He had spent his career talking about innovation, about global reach and talent. Yet here in the same building, a woman with the mind of a diplomat was scrubbing floors unnoticed. That night he couldn't stop thinking about her, the quiet pride in her eyes, the way she'd said, "They see the uniform and assume." He knew then something had to change. The next morning, Jonathan Miles arrived earlier than usual. The city skyline was still gray with dawn as he stepped into the quiet lobby. He half expected to find Denise there, mopping floors with her calm focus, but the lobby was empty. For the first time in years, he looked around not at the marble or the artwork, but at the people who made the building run. He wondered how many more stories like hers went unseen. By mid-morning, a small crisis had hit the company. Their translator for an important meeting with investors from Brazil had canceled due to a family emergency. Panic rippled through the communications team. Jonathan listened to their chatter and felt a sudden idea form like lightning. He knew exactly who to call. Minutes later, Denise walked into the executive floor, still wearing her janitor uniform, gloves tucked in her pocket. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Mr. Miles, you asked for me?" "Yes," he said, gesturing toward a conference room. "We've got guests from Sao Paulo. Our translator's out. Can you step in?" Her eyes widened. "Me? I don't have papers or certification?" He smiled. "You have something better. Fluency. Please." She hesitated, then straightened her posture and entered the room. 4 Brazilian executives sat waiting, confusion written across their faces. When Denise greeted them in flawless Portuguese, the tension vanished. Her tone was confident, warm, natural. Within minutes, laughter filled the room. She moved between both languages effortlessly, translating jokes, figures, and emotions as if she'd done it her whole life. Jonathan watched silently, arms crossed, utterly amazed. She didn't just translate words, she translated connection. The executives leaned forward, engaged, their smiles genuine. It was more than language. It was respect. When the meeting ended, one of the Brazilian guests shook Jonathan's hand and said, "Your translator, she's the best we've seen all year." Jonathan smiled proudly. "She's part of our team." Denise blushed slightly but said nothing. As they stepped outside the room, she murmured, "I hope I didn't overstep, sir." He looked at her. "Denise, you didn't overstep. You elevated the entire meeting." She smiled faintly, uncertain if he was serious. "Well, glad I could help." But he wasn't done yet. "You said you read Latin too?" "Yes, sir. Why?" He gestured toward a stack of dusty documents on a nearby shelf. "Those are old trade contracts our European partners sent. Half of them are untranslated. Think you could take a look sometime?" Denise laughed lightly. "You really trust a janitor with company documents?" Jonathan's eyes softened. "I don't see a janitor. I see someone with a gift this company has been blind to." Her smile faded into something more emotional, half gratitude, half disbelief. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. For the next few hours, Denise sat quietly in a corner of the executive office, reading, translating, noting corrections with precise handwriting. Secretaries whispered as they passed, confused by her presence. Some frowned, others looked curious. But Jonathan ignored them. By noon, she handed him the first translated report. "Finished," she said simply. He skimmed through it and stopped at the accuracy, the flow. It read better than the versions their professors, Ional translators, had produced. "This is incredible," he murmured. Denise shrugged. "It's just words, sir." "No," he said firmly. "It's understanding." Before she left, he asked quietly, "Denise, do you ever think people underestimate you?" She smiled sadly. "Every day, but I don't blame them. The world looks at uniforms before it looks at faces." Jonathan nodded slowly. "Maybe it's time we change that." That night, when she returned home to her small apartment, Denise's daughter asked, "Mom, why do you look so happy?" She smiled, removing her gloves. "Because today, someone finally listened." In his office, Jonathan stared out the window at the city lights, her words echoing in his head. He knew what he had to do next. By the third day, the office was buzzing. Rumors spread faster than coffee in the break room. Someone had seen the janitor sitting in the executive meeting. Another swore she was speaking 5 languages at once. Some laughed it off. Others whispered, curious and skeptical. "She's just the cleaning lady," one manager muttered. "No way she's working with the CEO." But Jonathan Miles didn't care about gossip. He had spent the last 2 nights rethinking his company's hiring values. Numbers, degrees, polished resumes. He suddenly realized how many brilliant minds might have slipped through the cracks simply because they didn't look the part. That morning he called Denise again. She entered his office quietly, her uniform freshly pressed, her expression cautious. "You wanted to see me, sir?" "Yes," he said, standing by the window. "I need your help again." She smiled faintly. "Another meeting?" "Something bigger." He handed her a folder. "These are global outreach plans for next quarter. We're expanding into 4 new regions. I want you to review them for accuracy in translation, tone, and cultural context." She blinked in surprise. "Me? But I'm not part of the communications team." He smiled. "Not yet." She hesitated, looking down at the papers. "Sir, I don't want people thinking I'm trying to take someone's job. I just clean." Jonathan's voice softened. "Denise, you don't just clean. You keep this building running. You make people feel safe, and you carry knowledge that could help us connect with the world. That's not small." Her eyes glistened for a moment before she looked away. "All right, I'll do my best." Over the next few days, Denise worked quietly during her breaks, reading through reports, catching errors no one else had noticed. She adjusted idioms that would have offended certain cultures, corrected misused phrases, and even suggested simpler translations that made the messages more human. Meanwhile, the office chatter grew louder. One afternoon, 2 executives stood near the elevator whispering, unaware Jonathan was behind them. "Can you believe it? The janitor's reviewing company documents now." "Ridiculous. What's next, making her vice president of linguistics?" Jonathan stepped forward calmly. "If she's the most qualified, maybe." The men fell silent instantly. That evening, Denise finished her last shift late. As she mopped the empty hall, the HR manager approached her. "You've been busy lately," he said with a smirk. "Word is the CEO's new favorite translator." She paused, unsure how to respond. "I'm just helping where I can." He gave a thin smile. "Careful, Denise. People don't like it when the cleaning staff start acting important." Her hands tightened around the mop handle, but she stayed calm. "I'm not acting important," she said quietly. "I'm just doing my job and maybe a little more." The HR manager walked off, leaving her alone under the fluorescent lights. For a moment, she felt the weight of every whisper pressing down, but then she remembered her daughter's voice. "Mom." Someone finally listened. That thought gave her strength. The next morning, Jonathan called a company-wide meeting. The entire staff gathered in. The main conference hall, curious. Denise stood quietly in the back, still in her uniform, unsure why she'd been invited. Jonathan took the stage. "Before we discuss quarterly reports," he began, "I want to talk about value, real value. Too often we measure it by title or appearance, but sometimes brilliance hides in plain sight." He looked toward the back. "Denise, would you come forward, please?" The room fell silent. Heads turned. Denise froze. "Me, sir?" "Yes, you." Slowly, she walked to the front, every step echoing in the stunned room. Jonathan smiled gently. "Everyone, meet Denise Carter. She speaks 9 languages and has helped this company more in 1 week than most consultants do in a year." A wave of astonishment rippled through the crowd. Some clapped uncertainly, others stared, embarrassed. Jonathan continued, "Starting today, she'll be assisting our international affairs team directly." Denise's eyes widened. "Sir, He stopped her kindly. "You earned this, Denise. You didn't ask for it. You proved it." For a moment she couldn't speak. Then with quiet strength she said, "Thank you, sir. I'll make sure you don't regret it." The room erupted into genuine applause, and for the first time in her life, Denise Carter wasn't invisible anymore. The promotion changed everything, and nothing. Denise now had a badge that opened new doors, but the stares she felt walking through those doors were sharper than ever. The same people who once ignored her now whispered behind her back. Some smiled to her face and rolled their eyes the moment she passed. The air around her seemed heavier, thick with envy and disbelief. She arrived early each morning, still wearing her janitor uniform beneath a blazer. It reminded her where she came from. "If they see a uniform, let them," she told herself quietly. "My work will speak louder, And it did. Within days, Denise had corrected translation errors that had been costing the company thousands in overseas miscommunications. She coordinated meetings with clients in Europe and Africa, switching languages effortlessly. She treated everyone, assistant or executive, the same, with quiet kindness and unwavering respect. But not everyone admired her. Linda, the senior communications officer, watched from across the hall, resentment simmering. She had spent 10 years climbing through the corporate ladder, collecting degrees and recognition, and now her boss was praising a janitor more than her. One afternoon, she cornered Jonathan in the hallway. "Sir, with all due respect," Linda began, voice dripping with politeness, "I think it sends the wrong message, elevating someone without formal qualifications. It could hurt morale." Jonathan looked at her evenly. "Linda, you're one of our best, but tell me, when's the last time you learned something new outside your comfort zone?" Her mouth opened, but no words came. He smiled gently. Denise didn't ask for this opportunity. She earned it. Later that day, Denise was reviewing a client file when Linda walked in, her smile tight. "Need help with that?" "It's quite advanced." Denise looked up calmly. "Thank you, but I think I've got it." She switched to German mid-sentence, quoting a correction from the document. Linda blinked. She couldn't understand a word. Denise then smiled softly. "Oh, sorry. Force of habit." The tension was silent but thick. Still, Denise refused to fight pettiness with pride. She simply kept working. That evening, Jonathan entered her office, a small corner desk he'd arranged near his own. "How are you settling in?" She smiled faintly. "It's strange, sir. Some people talk to me now, others talk about me." He nodded. "Change always shakes the ground. But remember, storms don't last." She looked down. "Sometimes I think people see me as a threat." "Then let them," he said quietly. "The only people threatened by your light are those afraid of their own shadows." His words sank deep. That night, Denise walked through the quiet lobby after everyone had left. She looked at the floor she used to mop and whispered, "You were my beginning, not my end." The next week, Jonathan announced a company-wide diversity initiative inspired by Denise's story. Her journey became a symbol, proof that talent exists in unexpected places. Cameras from local media even arrived to interview her. She stood before them humbly, saying, "I'm not special. I just never stopped learning. Sometimes opportunity doesn't knock, it waits for someone to listen." Her words went viral online, gathering thousands of views and comments praising her strength. Yet inside the company, jealousy grew stronger. Linda and a few others began plotting to expose her past, whispering that she'd lied about her education or misused company resources. One afternoon, Denise found an anonymous note on her desk. "You don't belong here." She stared at it for a long time, heart heavy, then folded it quietly and placed it in her drawer. "I belong anywhere I work hard," she murmured. Jonathan noticed her silence in meetings, the slight tiredness in her eyes. "Something bothering you?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, sir. I've faced worse." But he knew, and deep down, so did everyone else. What none of them realized was that the next test, the one that would define Denise's worth forever, was coming sooner than anyone expected. It happened on a Thursday morning, when the office buzzed with tension. An important investor from France was visiting to finalize a multi-million-dollar deal. It was Denise's first major assignment as cultural liaison, and she had prepared every document, translation, and presentation with care. But hidden beneath the surface, jealousy brewed. Linda and a few colleagues had quietly altered one of the French contracts, switching key clauses to make it look like Denise had made a costly translation mistake. When the meeting began, the French investor frowned as he read through the papers. "This is not correct," he said sharply. "You changed our profit terms. This is unacceptable." Jonathan looked puzzled. "That can't be right. Denise handled those documents personally." Denise's heart sank. She leaned forward, reading the page in question. Her eyes widened. The French phrasing was completely wrong, twisted to imply greed. It wasn't her work. I didn't translate this version, she said softly. Linda, sitting across the table, raised an eyebrow. Maybe you forgot to review it, Denise. We all make mistakes. The investor's voice grew colder. This looks deliberate. Jonathan glanced between them. Denise, can you clarify? She took a slow breath. If I may, sir, I'd like to compare it to my original file. Within minutes, she opened her laptop and pulled up the draft she'd saved. Her version was flawless, balanced, professional, and respectful. Then she turned to the tampered copy, pointing out each subtle difference. Her tone was calm, confident, not defensive. This clause, she explained in French, changes the meaning from shared profit to exclusive claim. No company would ever accept that. The investor's expression softened. You are correct. This version is wrong. Yours is precise. Jonathan's jaw tightened. Then someone modified the document. He turned his gaze slowly toward Linda. She looked pale, stammering something about a miscommunication, but the damage was done. The truth was undeniable. After the meeting, Jonathan called Denise to his office. He looked deeply regretful. I'm sorry you had to face that. You handled it better than most executives would. Denise shook her head gently. You don't need to apologize, sir. I've learned something important today. Sometimes the test isn't about skill, it's about strength. He smiled faintly. And you passed both. Later that afternoon, Jonathan sent an internal memo clearing Denise's name and praising her professionalism, but he didn't stop there. He announced an internal audit and a new policy to ensure no staff member's work could be altered without proper review. Word spread quickly. People who once whispered about Denise now looked at her with new respect. Even those who had doubted her felt a quiet sense of shame. Linda, meanwhile, was reassigned to another department after her involvement surfaced. That evening, as the office emptied, Jonathan found Denise standing by the lobby window looking out at the setting sun. The same place where she used to mop floors now reflected her image in the glass. No mop, no bucket, just dignity. You know, he said gently, when I first heard you speak Mandarin in this lobby, I thought I'd found a miracle, but I was wrong. She looked at him puzzled. Wrong, sir? Yes, he said with a smile. You weren't a miracle. You were a reminder of what humanity looks like when we stop judging by uniforms and start listening to hearts. For a long moment, neither spoke. The city lights blinked outside and the hum of evening filled the air. Denise finally said, I never wanted to prove anyone wrong. I just wanted to show what I could do. Jonathan nodded. And you did more than that. You've changed how this company thinks. She smiled softly. Then it was worth every floor I cleaned. As she left that night, the janitorial team greeted her warmly. They had seen one of their own rise, not through luck, but through perseverance. A month had passed since the incident, and the company felt different. The walls seemed brighter, the hallways quieter, the atmosphere lighter. People greeted Denise with smiles now, not out of pity or curiosity, but genuine respect. She had gone from being invisible to being an inspiration. Posters about inclusion and hidden talent now hung in the lobby she once cleaned. Jonathan Miles, too, had changed. He walked with a new awareness, stopping to speak with the cleaning crew, security guards, and cafeteria staff. You never know where brilliance hides, he would say, with a smile. One Friday morning, he called for a full company meeting. The entire staff gathered, curious. Denise stood near the front this time, wearing a simple navy dress. Her janitor's badge was gone, replaced with one that read Director of Global Communications. Jonathan stepped up to the podium. A few months ago, he began, I overheard something extraordinary in this very lobby. A woman speaking Mandarin, Spanish, and French like she'd been born into all three worlds. That moment changed how I see people, and how this company sees potential. He looked at Denise, eyes warm with pride. Denise Carter reminded us that respect is not given by position. It's earned through character. And talent has no uniform. The crowd erupted in applause. Denise's eyes shimmered, but she smiled humbly. When the clapping faded, Jonathan turned to her. Denise, we'd like you to share something. She stepped forward, heart racing. I don't have a speech, she began softly. Just a story. The room fell silent. I started here 13 years ago, she said. Back then, I pushed a mop, emptied trash bins, and scrubbed floors. People passed by without seeing me, and honestly, I didn't expect them to. Life had taught me not to. But one day, someone listened, and that changed everything. She paused, glancing toward the janitorial crew standing in the back, their eyes glistening with pride. I want everyone here to remember, what you do doesn't define who you are. Respect is free. It costs nothing to be kind, but it means everything to the person who needs it. The room stayed silent for a moment. Then the applause began again. Louder, longer, fuller. Some people even stood, clapping with tears in their eyes. After the meeting, as people congratulated her, Denise noticed a familiar face, a young woman in a janitor's uniform standing shyly near the door. She looked nervous but full. Denise walked over. You did great, the woman said softly. You make us all proud. Denise smiled. Thank you. What's your name? Jasmine, the woman replied. I'm new here. Denise nodded, touching her shoulder gently. Never let this uniform make you feel small, Jasmine. You never know who's watching or how your story might inspire someone else. Jasmine smiled wide, eyes shining with belief. Later that afternoon, Jonathan found Denise in her new office, simple, bright, and filled with books in every language. You handled that beautifully, he said. She chuckled. I just spoke from the heart. He smiled. That's what true leaders do. A soft silence followed, filled with mutual respect. Then Jonathan placed a folder on her desk. One more thing, I spoke with our European partners. They're launching a scholarship program for employees who want to continue their education. I recommended naming it after you. Denise blinked, stunned. After me? He nodded. The Denise Carter Global Opportunity Fund. It'll help staff, no matter their job title, learn new skills, languages, or degrees. Your story will open doors for others. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what to say. He smiled warmly. You've already said it, Denise. Through every action. That evening, as she left the building, the sun painted the sky in gold and rose. She stopped by the lobby where everything had begun. The floor gleamed beneath her feet, and her reflections shimmered on the polished surface. For a moment she saw her younger self, mop in hand, tired but unbroken. Thank you, she whispered to the reflection, for never giving up. Then she turned and walked out the glass doors, head high, step steady, leaving behind not just footprints, but a legacy that would remind everyone who entered that building. Never judge a person by their uniform, because respect, like greatness, often begins in silence.